உள்ளமெனும் உள்ள பொருள் உள்ளலவன் உள்ளத்தே உள்ளபடி உள்ளதே உள்ளல் உணர்வாயே. நமோ ரமண.
The scene depends on the seer. But here Bhagavan is not giving that. He is saying that kannalar kaatchi undo, kan alar kaatchi undo implies, can the scene be of a nature different from the nature of the seer? What I am literally made of, that exactly is the same stuff with which the scene is made. Now how do we get around to this? Because there was a conversation this afternoon with one of my old friends, another co-traveler. So we were discussing about how Arunachala assures that whoever is born within the vicinity of Moonanarige, or the so much kilometers within the vicinity of Arunachala, they will get mukti. Now, the one whom I was discussing with is a devotee who has done over 500-600 girivalams, and of course he has offered all of that to his ishta. Now that person had brought this because he is living in some other place. So we were discussing about that statement, that what is the responsibility of the Atma Vichari towards that statement. So we found that while discussing that statement, the validity is never out of place, because we see Lakshmi having only one desire, to be near Bhagavan. Just to be near Bhagavan, that is the only desire. Total surrender, offer all the children, all the duties and responsibilities to Bhagavan, and Bhagavan gives mukti without need for any kind of such online talks or any other thing. Lakshmi Amma is given the highest without diksha and other things required. So we see that literally being implemented. The assurance of Arunachala himself has come as Bhagavan, and we see literally the assurance just being in the vicinity is enough. There is nothing else that is required. No sadhana is required. It is Supreme Court ruling, says Bhagavan to Devraj Mudaliar, who asks, how can this be possible? Devraj Mudaliar is a lawyer, and Bhagavan says that is Supreme Court ruling, what to do. That has been an assurance given. No, but we discovered in the course of our discussion that it is not without sadhana. That to be born, to be living near the vicinity of Arunachala is not without sadhana. It is with tremendous sadhana that is done, because we who have gone in and come out, there are several times when I have gone in the morning and come in the evening. So at the time of living, I am not doing the sadhana which Lakshmi Amma has done. That is the Deha Prarabdha, is that the things here seem more important, and the intellect brings the body here. But what is the responsibility? What is the responsibility for the Atma Vichari? Knowing fully well that the Bhakti gives that option. We even discussed the story of Jadabharata, where the 3 different janmas, as the Raja Rishi, what kind of tapas he did, and what small attachment to a deer, to a doe, which he rears and thinks about whether she has come back safely in the evening or not, makes him born as a deer. But his tapas has not gone anywhere. He is born just like Lakshmi Amma. He is born near a sage's ashram. The deer roams around the sage's ashram, and the next janma, of course, is the fruition of the tapas, and he is born of Jadabharata, finishing the task almost right at birth. But while looking at that, what is the role of the Atma Vichari? That only if I am taking myself to be the physical body, the sensory body, Uruvam Tanayin, Ulagupara Matram. The world is divided as Faridabad, Bangalore, and Tiruvannamalai. only if I take myself to be this fleshy body, then Faridabad is somewhere, Bangalore is here, and Tiruvannamalai is somewhere else. Whereas Uruvam Thanandrel, let us go step by step. If I understand that the physical body to be taken from Faridabad or from Bangalore to Tiruvannamalai, it requires the intellect, it requires the buddhi, it requires the subtle body. The subtle body has to see the importance of going there. Then take the as, brother as. There is a Christian saint who calls the body as brother as, because the intelligence comes from somewhere else to maintain or to handle the body. To those who know this, to those who understand this, what is the responsibility? Bhagavan says that the whole of the gross world is present in the subtle. That is what he says, that you are not in the world, but the world is in you. That is why we see that drishtim jnanamayim krutva pashyat brahmamayam jagat. If our drishti, if the sight is made into jnanamayam, then the same world which is seen as time and place with so many things filled in, the same is seen as brahmamayam. Now, how is this practically possible? That this is a chair, this is here, and Tiruvannamalai is 200 kilometers away, Faridabad thousands of kilometers away. How is this possible? We practically see that in one of the earlier verse discussions, we had seen that when we use the electron microscope, then the truth of the skin that has been placed on the petri dish or on the slide, it is no more seen as the skin. It is seen at the cellular level, and it can be seen at the atomic level in some other investigation perhaps. But we see that when we see at the cellular level, then the gross level is not there. The truth of the object seen is literally dependent on the subtlety of the seeing. And when we are inquiring into the nature of the ahankara, the I, we are coming to the Upadesha of Bhagavan to turn inward. We understand that even to see through a microscope, the attention has to be turned outward. Whereas when we are looking into Tannai Ornde, as was instructed in verse number 2 and verse number 3, or as instructed in verse number 4, to see the truth about oneself. Am I a form or am I not a form? When we do that, then the attention, instead of going outward, is turned inward. And at that point, what Bhagavan says, treat the world like a dream, that becomes a reality. That when we are turned inward completely, as instructed in verse number 2, verse number 3, and verse number 4, to look at the source of or the truth of the I, then the whole of the sensory world, including the time and place, becomes dream-like. As he asks, treat the world like a dream. And of course, what is the nature of the dream? In the nature of the dream, it is in the outside world, it appears there must be a power which makes things move, which makes the earth rotate, or which makes the sun give radiation like this. But this making, doing, giving is all shifted to knowing in dream. The one knower is there, and the whole dream is known by that one dreamer. Not only from doing to knowing, from knowing to being. What is the dream made of? What is the dream made of? The dream is made of me. The dream is made of me as consciousness. For this, the often recalled example of our friend Dilipji's colleague Raghavendra, giving his experience of a dream where he himself in the waking state is somebody who doesn't know Sanskrit, and Dilipji, he knows a bit of Sanskrit because of his interest in chanting, learning Rudram, Chamakam and all that. And this is a dream of the colleague of Dilipji. His name is Raghavendra, sir. He gives this experience like this somewhat. I'm only paraphrasing, may not be exact, but I think we'll get the message. That in the dream, Raghavendra, the person who is dreaming, Dilipji, both of them are going to meet a Pandit who is an expert in Sanskrit. And the Pandit and Dilipji fall into discussing things in Sanskrit. At some point, the Pandit turns to Raghavendra, still in the dream, and asks him something in Sanskrit. And Raghavendra tells, Swami, I do not know Sanskrit. And at that point, the dream ends. Now, the realization for all of us, where we can do this thought experiment of putting ourselves in the shoes of Raghavendra, sir, that who are all the things, what are all the things in that dream? The Pandit, Dilipji, Raghavendra, the speaking in Sanskrit, the language Sanskrit, the not knowing of Sanskrit, everything is what? Everything is Raghavendra himself. Is from things being moved, from things being known to things being. That means the things in the dream are literally made of the same stuff as who Raghavendra is. That is what happens in Atma Vicharam. That is what happens. Kan alar kachi undo. From doing things, moving, from gaining happiness, from changing from one position to another, achieving, letting go, all these things, from that we come to knowing. That to know may be the route to happiness. If we know, then we can perhaps do, if necessary. Then from knowing, we come to being. The very stuff that we are made of, the seer is made of, that is the very same stuff of which the seen is made. So it is enough to see what stuff one is really made of. Kannalar kachi undo. That is something we have to meditate on, internalize. If we see the material or the substance, the swarupa of which I am, then the world and God are also the very same swarupa. Kannalar kachi undo. That is something. So, uruvam tanayin ulladu paramatram. If I am the nature of form, then the world and God necessarily are of form. Uruvam tanendral. If I have no form, then obviously the world or God cannot have form, because who is there to see or how to see? Kandalar kachi undo. Normally speaking, can there be a scene without the seer? But in Bhagavan, is the nature of the scene anyway different from the nature of the seer? Kan adutan. Andamila kannam. What is the real eye? The real seeing or the real kan. Real eye is the Atman, is the self. Aham, aham, aham. Iti sakshat Atma rupena bhati. Between the seer and the seen, if Advaita is taken as the Guru Upadesha, only one can be true. Either the seer has to be true or the seen has to be true. Obviously, all the Upadesha is, the seen cannot be true. Therefore, aham, 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 nan, 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 nan. Atma rupena bhati. Drishtim jnanamayam kritva. If the drishti inside, if the eye, seeing eye is transformed into jnana, pashyet brahmamayam jagat. The whole creation is seen as brahmamayam only, or andamila kan. If one is the self, then the act of seeing and the seen all get merged into the self. How Ganapati Muni puts it in Chatvarimshata, he says, Chatvarimshata, of course, is a Bhakti Marga Stuti, but there are a lot of inputs on jnana that are present in that. Jagat aham para spurati me trayam, says Ganapati Muni. That Jagat, what was seen as the multiplicity of world, aham, the I, who is either participant or beneficiary of the world, para, the one who is running the whole show, all the three are merged and are shining together as this Purana. Jagad aham para spurati me trayam. All the three are shining as Bhagavan has literally gathered all that, put it into the Kamandalu and given us the whole Kamandalu to drink. The Jagad aham para spurati me trayam. All the three are shining as I. Without room for doubt, all the three are shining. That is the Upadesha given in the verse. If I, so the ball is firmly in our court, and there is no way I am now going to blame world for all its variations or for God for not helping me. No. The onus, as per Bhagavan, Supadesham, God's grace is constant. It is not directed towards any particular team or particular person, though that also happens in the general presence. We see some person being blessed and all that, but that's not because the grace has any partiality. That is due to the sadhana or becoming ready for receiving the grace. So the world, which is now, which many times I would have blamed, if you want to have a laugh at it, there was many times in my difficult period when I would blame so many things. Somebody whom I meet in the morning, oh, I did not meet the right person, and you can see the list. You can see the list go on. I really don't want to go into that because it's a huge list on what we can blame as the other and escape. But here the ball is firmly in our court that if whatever you are, that is what you are going to see as the world. That is what you are going to see as the nature of God. There is a discussion between a group of visitors. They happen to come from the Mohammedan belief system. Not very important, but they are worshippers of the formless. Or they come and ask Bhagwan, and this is one of the popular discussions in talks, which we have to go through while discussing this verse, because it is very relevant for one point, which we will see towards the end, that in the discussion, they ask, does God have form? And Bhagavan says, who says so? Indicating that, obviously not. Am I saying like that? Am I saying God is having form like that? Then they say, why then there is worship of God here in the ashram? And says, put God aside for the moment. We will inquire into whether he has form or not. Do you have form? Bhagavan asks, do you have form? Then that person says, yes, definitely. What? This 5.5 feet and beard and mustache, this is what is you? Asks Bhagavan. Yes, of course. Even in deep sleep, were you that? And we, the devotees of Bhagavan, would immediately agree with him and say, no, that in deep sleep we were not that. But that is, dual interpretation is possible. Without getting into too much confusion, he doesn't agree. He says that before going to sleep, I was the body. After getting up, I was also the body. Therefore, I was the body right through also. So there is no way to refute that. Now, you can either agree with Bhagavan that you are bodiless and free, or you can take the view that you were bound even in deep sleep. It's up to us, and he takes that path. Then Bhagavan goes to the other astra, that then when the body is dead, it should claim that it should not be taken to the cremation ground or burial ground, as is the custom. And when that astra is given, that does your body say that it should not be taken to the burial ground when it is dead? Then he says, no, no, no. I am not the body. I am the conscious jiva within the body. Then Bhagavan says, see, so far you were saying that you were the body, and therefore the question, so far as you are identified with the body, to say that you are worshipping the formless is an impossibility. Now that is the point that Bhagavan makes in that talk, which is very important to note, that there is nothing wrong in worshipping God, in aggregating the multiplicity of the world into one. What do? We aggregate, when we worship one name and form, we aggregate this multiplicity of goals, multiplicity of tasks, multiplicity of responsibilities, and all this into one, including ourselves, put ourselves in that pot and make it as one nama and rupa, to which we surrender, that one power which runs everything. Bhagavan says, so far as you have identity with the body, it is desirable to worship. It will aggregate. Otherwise, if you go into atheism like that, whatever identity you have, that gets broken up. You can't gather yourself. So it is desirable to worship, and it is impossible to worship the formless. The only direct way to go into the truth of God is to directly go into the truth of oneself. Then what happens? Two things happen. As we dig into the truth of ourselves, that tapas brings in strength. That tapas brings in strength of spirit to understand the truth. When the truth presents itself, we don't run away for want of tapas. We are ready, because as we do vichara, the tapasvic strength automatically increase. Whatever truth presents itself, we are able to be ready to receive it. So first, our readiness is the key. Then whatever truth presents itself, we are able to assimilate it, till the final truth, that the self is self-luminously presents itself. When we are also ready to merge into that, and the truth is also ready to absorb, therefore the truth alone shines as I, where one's own form, the form of the world, and the form of the God, all are merged into that formless self, which is self-luminous, and which is quiet, which is silent, which is maunam. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Let us sit and practice till 8 o'clock, when Dilipji will give us a summary of what we discussed.
Namo Ramana. I request Dilipji to give us the summary. Namo Ramana, sir.
Namo Ramana, sir. Thank you. It was a very wonderful insight given from such love by Nanda Kumarji about how this verse was very important for him, how he got the clarity about what the truth is, and how he figured out the conveniences which the mind comes up with, deludes and keeps making one go in loops. That was very beautifully conveyed in this entire 1 hour for all of us through stories and with precise clarity that the name and the form, the subtle or the gross, is all made of the same stuff which the subject who is seeing it is made of. And therefore, he made the three bodies, which is the gross, subtle, and the causal, which can be said that the gross which is experienced in the waking, the subtle which is experienced in the dream, and the causal which is experienced during the sleep as darkness. In all the three states, the clarity was brought because the subject, I, persists, they're looking outward or having an identity and looking up. What does the Bhagavan says? The I leaves one object and holds on to the next object. So it is still outward turn, essentially. And in that way, Nanda Kumarji brought out very beautifully that in all these three states of waking, dream, sleep, or gross, subtle, and causal, because the I, the subject, is still there, therefore, these three are of the same nature of that I. When the I becomes more or associated with the body in the waking, then the gross world is saved. When the I becomes more associated with the mental things, with the thoughts, as in dream, we see the whole dreams come out in the form of more like a thoughts alone. And when we see the sleep and the I is still outward turned, holding on to ignorance, then we see the darkness. But all of this is not what Bhagavan is talking about. He's therefore asking us to whom all of this appear, or he's asking us to look at the screen on which all of this appear and disappear, the waking, dream, and sleep, which is this self. That clarity was beautifully given to us. And not only that, the clarity for the sadhana was given in terms of how the convenience the mind uses. The convenience of being in devotion or as a vichari. And it was said very beautifully that, whenever it is convenient to be a bhakta, the ego takes that form. And whenever it is convenient to have an intellectual argument, it takes the form of the intelligence. But in both, the onus is on oneself, which is the most important thing Nanda Kumarji brought. If I want to experience this unalloyed happiness of my nature, then all this convenience has to be inquired. Because grace, as he said very beautifully, is constant. So if the breeze of grace is constant, and if I don't, or if the sun of grace is constant, if I don't make my hay dry or the hay, then it is the onus is on me. So that was very beautifully brought out for all of us. So essentially, whenever we can see it as whenever there is a thought, that is nothing but a convenience that is happening. And therefore, the grace, who am I, when it questions that convenience and takes us back to the self, that is the clarity. That is the thing. But again, this again should not become a convenience. So the critical inquiry that is required with the questioning of who am I, to see how the mind and the intellect and the I plays out, constantly making us outward turn, that critical inquiry, how it is important, was very beautifully brought out to all of us. Thank you, Nanda Kumar ji, for that wonderful clarity. And let's pray to Master to have that strength to remain in that thought-free state, one with him as the self. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramana.
Namo Ramana. That's a summary you can listen even if you don't listen to the talk. It's very nice. Thank you, sir. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana.
Ramananjali, Ramananjali, Ramananjali.